Welcome, and I'm going to show a few things about Excel. So this is Robin Green, and we're looking at some of our 110 work. Everything that we do is related to what I'm going to show. So just quickly a couple things. First off, copying. You should be able to type in this data fairly easily. You should be able to bold, resize text, everything else, just from our previous work. I'd like to, if you select something, and remember selecting and filling are two different things. Here's the fill handle. Here is your mouse when you're selecting. So click and drag to select. I'm doing a Control C, and I'm going to come down here and Control V and paste. So you can see some of those options that you're able to work in and be able to see all of the things that are available to you just by using that easy option that's there. So when we're dealing with some of the simple things and we want to see some of the options that we're working with all the time, we can see, okay, bonus commissions. Let's say if we wanted to do some sort of movement, we can actually drag these down if we wish, and to do something like increase a margin, and notice that I'll show you the difference. And so how do we move it over? You can use this icon to move that over or back. So these icons are increasing or decreasing the indentation, and of course how it looks makes a difference. So you can see that the ones that I had copied already had the indentation. So we have research and development, and then receive for bonuses is also required. So I'm going to just drag this guy down and add that to it. So receive for bonuses. And once again, just to have that looking nice, we'll make the indent. So you have some options. Reserve, sorry. So if we're taking a look at how things are running, once again, this is just data, and we can tell that by going Control tilde, and you can see that nothing really, Control tilde, nothing really changes. That data is still data. So once we get formulas in there, you'll see the difference. Well, the other thing that is kind of cool is you can take and do some sort of formatting on these cells. And there's January, and of course you can see where it's horizontal. You have general options, left, center, fill, justify. You have bottom, top, center, bottom, justify, distribute. You have a wrap text, which wraps the text around to the next line as long as the width of the cell, shrink to fit into the cell, or merge cells. We're going to go ahead and just drag this up to 45, and you can see the difference, and I'll say OK, and then take that formatting across. Now we selected, remember, using this looking type of mouse, but now we're going to fill. And using the fill handle is nice because January, we don't have to worry about any of the months. And of course there is all the way January to June, so the first half of the year. And then if we come in here, we can type in total, and it will pick up the formatting as we move along. So I've got some lines in here, and once again these are pretty generic lines, and here you can see some of the when we're doing some styles, total styles, and we can take a look at how the total looks and how you're coloring and monitoring. So anytime you're doing that on our page layout, we have themes, and I've already got the theme check. So you should know those already just by doing our previous work and setting things up. So I'd like to talk a little bit about absolute cell reference. So we've been doing sums, which are pretty easy. So if I just click in here, I'm going to delete this guy real quick. And put in a quick option of going to the summation E, and it's going to sum the most relevant cells. And if I hit enter there, that gives me my value. So that's pretty easy. We know about that, and of course we could fill that and make it be the totals of those particular rows. Well, notice that that's cell relativity, and if I go Control tilde, we can see those formulas, and we're able to check them out. I filled down, so it goes from B4 to G4, and then B5 to G5, and B6 to G6. So when I fill down, it changes the row. If I fill across, it'll change the column, the letters. So Control tilde back, and let's take a look about cell relativity. Now I have some data down here that we're going to use in order to figure the cost of goods sold. So when we're doing that, of course, that's our own function, so we'll put the equal sign. Anytime we're doing work, we use the equal sign, and then I can click on this cell instead of typing it in, and then I'm going to multiply then that times the grouping of, to get a percentage, 1 and then minus the percent of what is in B21 of the margin. Okay, so if I leave that as is right there, there's a formula. The problem with that formula, it gives me a nice value right there, but if I go and fill it across now, you can see, and I'll just fill it a few spots, it's going to say, oh, well, that's the same, and that's the same value, and that's the same value. It doesn't change the value. Well, that's because when we do Control tilde, the formulas, you can see it goes B4 times the 1 minus B21, and the C4, which is what we want, times 1 times C21, but there's nothing in this C21, so that's 1 minus 0, which is just 1, so we're just multiplying times 1, which doesn't change the value. We don't want it to move to this cell, we want it to stay in B21. So in order to do that, I'm going to go Control tilde back and just click on this cell again and modify this formula. We can come in here and say, okay, B21, and I can type these in, or I can use the key F4, and that gives me dollar signs. You can see dollar signs in front of the B and in front of the 21, which is in front of the column and in front of the row, which holds the column and holds the row. And that's absolute cell reference. And if I'm talking about mixed cell reference, which I could use for certain situations, use less than absolute because that's very easy just to hold that cell if I want to. But if I hit my F4 key again, notice that it's going to hold 21, which means it's going to hold the row 21. So as I fill across, the C, D, E, and F can change, but 21 cannot change. So it would allow that to still be, those would still be zeros because of course the columns would change. If I fill down though, it'll keep it in 21 even though I'm moving down to 22, 23. F4 again holds the column, so this one would work for us no matter what because it's holding the column, and as we fill it across and I'm still in row 21, it will still keep that C option. And we can take a look at it so that you can see how that works. There's B21, and if I fill it across and I go Control tilde, it's going to say B21, B21. Control tilde back and get those values back. Now if I'm going to come in here, and F4 will give me back a relative. Once again, that's absolute, and there is the first with the column varying but the row not. Okay, and if I hit enter again, and that's the opposite of what I had. So if I fill this, it'll go back to the regular ones because, once again, it's not going to be B21. Control tilde, it's going to be B21, C21, D21 as we move across because it's holding the row and not the column. Okay, so it's just easier most of the time to come in here and say, okay, I'm going to set up this formula. I'm going to come in here, and you can type those in, but F4 is a nice key, and you can go through the 4 different options of absolute cell reference, mixed cell reference of both types, and then back to relative cell reference. So this dollar sign in front of both, if I'm going to want to hold that cell, is the easy one, and then as I click in here, I can fill that then to what I need, to June. And you can see if I go Control tilde that those then values stay B21 throughout the selections of each one of those, even though that everything else changes. C4, D4, E4, everything's changing there, but I have the B21 all the way through. So that's absolute cell reference. Very, very important. And then, of course, gross margin is a easy formula that we can work through, and we just take B4 and subtract then minus B5 and hit enter, and then we have our own filling across as well. Okay. And even if we filled it into the, which we probably should, put into the total. There we go. Those will all now be Control tilde back. A beautiful, nice set of formatting. Now realize too that this is what we have with currency. Differences between currency and accounting. You can see here it sets currency. I can choose accounting here, or I can click on the dollar sign and look at what the difference that it makes. So the dollar sign moves away from the number, and so that's one hint that you can tell the difference in between accounting and currency. The other way is the zero amount. So if I have some zero amount here, so there's 0, enter, it's a dash in accounting, where in currency it shows the zeros with the number sign against it. So you should know the difference in between accounting and currency and be able to use either one efficiently. I'm going to go Control Z back all the way to where I had my currency options that are there. And then here now, if I do expenses or bonus options, I'm going to show an if statement, and there's 3 different ways of doing an if statement. You can type it in, so I can go equals if, and everything inside an if statement is in parentheses, just like all functions have parentheses for whatever parameters that they have. Most of the time it's a block of cells, but with an if statement we have first the logical test, separated by a comma, whatever happens if it's true, separated by a comma, whatever happens if it's false. So 3 different pieces to the if statement. And we can put different things in here. So if I go if B4, if those sales are greater than or equal to, and you have to know the difference between greater than and equal to. Greater than is everything greater than that value. Greater than or equal to gives you also that possible value. And we'll go down here to our reserve for bonuses. So over 4 3/4 mil, if it's greater than or equal to that, we'll give a bonus. And what's that bonus going to be? Well, if it's true, we have a comma, so whatever happens if it's true. And of course we have an amount to do that. So that's the bonus amount. That's 100 grand. So that bonus will be given there. If it's false, true and false separated by a comma, we're going to put 0. So that's the number option that's there. I'm going to tab over and do there's 0 option. You can see we'll do one more. We'll go up here and do the summation E, down arrow, and say more functions, and we can see the if, and I'll say OK. And you can see there's the logical test. I'm going to cancel that, and I can come up here and do also the same thing with the f of x option. So I can click on the f of x. It puts an equals in my box and brings up the same box. So you can go either way, whichever way you feel more comfortable. And then when I say OK on the if statement, it gives me then the 3 pieces. So I don't have to remember to separate them out by commas. I can just do my logical test. And once again, that is, in this case, C4. And if C4 is greater than or equal to our cell of reserve for bonuses. And remember that these have to be absolute cell reference. If I don't have my absolute cell reference, it's just going to copy over. But I'm not going to worry about that. I'll come back and fix it on the first one because that's the one I'm going to copy over. I just want to show a little bit of difference in between, okay, what about words? So normally if I'm going to type it in, I have to remember that words have to have double quotes. But in this option, I can say bonus or no bonus, and it will go ahead and put the double quotes in there for me. As soon as I get out of the cell, notice that there are double quotes around that. If I'm typing it in, I'd have to work through that, and I can say OK on that point too, and you can see that there is a bonus there. If I fill it back, there is no bonus. Okay, so those are the words. If I go Control Z and move it to the option, then of course there's one other. So once again, I'm going to go equals if, and then there's the if option, and if I click on it, or double click on it, it says, oh, now you need the logical test. And what's the logical test? Well, it's the same thing that we've been doing all along. There's the D4, and we're going to make sure that that's greater than or equal to my amount. And this is, once again, this is just the 3 different ways. We're going to just fill it across as we go along. But comma, now you can see, okay, what do you want it if it's true? And what if we want some percentage of that 100 grand? So we can also have a formula here, or even another if statement. So we can go, well, whatever amount that it's over, or whatever percentage of that bonus amount. Say if I wanted our commission option and that percentage. So if I take and I multiply this cell, which once again would have to be absolute cell reference, so I'm going to put the F4 there, and I'm going to multiply that then times, how much is it over? Okay, so I will take then parentheses to figure out how much is that cell minus this amount. Okay, so if it's true, if it's greater than, we're going to take and give our commission of however much is over that 4 3/4 mil. So that gives me an amount of options, and of course if not, I can still put 0, or I can put just maybe I'm just going to put a commission even though you're working for me there. So I can also do that guy and put absolute cell reference. So that is an option, and of course B24 also needs to be absolute cell reference, so F4 in there, and if I hit enter you can see that that's a calculated value. Well, any of those would work. The one that we want is this one right here, but I need to fix it. I need to come up here and say, okay, the B24 is absolute, so F4 on that, and the B19 is absolute, so there is F4 on that one. So that's the one I want, and I can fill that across when I'm ready or right now. Okay. And then that gives those amounts that are those on those months what the commission is, or what the bonus is. Now for a commission we would just do basically pretty simple options. So equals our sales and multiply that times and just knowing our math operators, so asterisk is multiplication. We multiply that times our commission amount. So this guy F4, which makes it absolute, and we're ready to go on. So I'm going to fill in the rest of those, which would just be B4 times B22, and B4 times B23, and B4 times B25, and then do the sums down here. So now that I have them filled in, you can see that with my control tilde, that these are all my formulas. And then I can go ahead and just do them once and fill them all the way across. So I could have done that with my if statement as well. So as I fill them April to June, and you can see that that works quite well. And then of course do my sum for here very quickly, enter, and fill that down. And then control tilde back, and you can see then those values. And if I just notice that this doesn't have the total going all the way across because I filled it down, I could have filled it without formatting, which is probably what I should have done. I can still do that. So I can come back here and say fill without formatting, and you can see that, oh, hey, that line is still there and it's good. Another way that I can do that, I'll come here and remove the formatting, so clear the form. How about Control Z, and instead of clicking on clear formats, there we go. So if I wanted this formatting in for this cell, I could just take, hey, I'm going to fill it across, and I don't particularly need the formula, but I do want to just fill the formatting. So I can fill the formatting only, and it looks pretty. So I can fix things along the way, or I can use my Format Painter, which is a great way to come up here and say, okay, I'm going to go use that formatting on that text or cells of whatever. And if I click once, I get it once. If I click on it twice, I get it as many times as I want. And you can see my mouse is changed and it's got a paintbrush to it. And so I can make those changes with my sales. I can make those changes with my gross margin and make those look good. And then either click off or do a Control-Z if I click someplace that I'm not supposed to. So you can see I clicked off and now there is no paintbrush on there. So we've gone over several things. Absolute cell reference is very important. You can see that our formulas are there. We've gone over a little bit of formatting. We've done a few simple copy paste things. Now if we were going to do a pie chart and we want to make a pie chart look like this, oh hey, let's go ahead and but it's in its own sheet. So the thing about that when we're using our pie chart is if we were to select our months and then to do another selection, let's come down here and finish out what our operating income should be, and that's why there was nothing showing. So we'll say equals, and we have B6, which is our gross margin, and then we'll subtract our total expenses. So minus, there we go, and hit enter. Okay, so those are the values that we want, and we go across, and sure, we'll go ahead and do that. So those are the values that are needed in order to get to that chart. So what we would do then, of course, is to select the months, hold down our Control key so that we can select non-adjacent values. So Control and then select the non-adjacent values. And the order of which you do that, and you don't want the total included because, of course, that's going to skew what your months would be. But you can definitely do that. And then you would go to Insert Chart, and you can choose like a 3D chart. Okay. So and how it looks and what the color is completely up to us. If you want to make it a certain type of chart, you can make it a certain type of chart, and you can see some of the things that you're used to in order to view it back, or even to get like this June option to pull away. If we pull that away, we can line that up and use different things to work with it. So the use, we pulled this one away. Say we also want to do March. Okay, so I click on it and then I can click on it again, and then if I click and drag it back, you can see that it'll drag back with that pie. So using and be able to modify, if I click on the outside of March, notice I get them all. If I click on the one again, I get the one. So these are the percentage that is showing. I can put them on top, I can move them around, and I can change the different fonts that's there. This is just the title of the chart, so I can click on it and modify it as I want as well. So working with these charts and being able to make them look good is a big plus. And you can see that there are different tools here that allow you to do different colors, different filters, and of course chart titles and labels, and maybe even a legend, right? Okay, and you can see the different colors. We don't necessarily need it for this just because it's a very easy fix to work with. Okay, let's go back, and one of the other things that I'd like to do is goal seeking. So I'm going to modify this percentage. So if I come over here and I want this to be modified by changing that, I go ahead and I can click here, and remember what's being used there. It's really just my margin of use, so I could be clicking up here too, but I'll stay down here on the final one, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to come up here to my data, and I'm going to do a what if analysis, and there's other options too. There's different type of data tables. And the goal seeking is what we're going to do, and also scenario manager. So goal seek is like, hey, when am I going to be right? When am I going to make a margin? What if I want to make more as a margin? So so this is 9, almost 9.5. If I wanted to get that value to, say, 10, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I want to change what cell. I'm going to get my margin out here, and that's a percentage, and I say OK. Notice that I have to jump it up to 62.43, so that's how I'm going to get that much. And I say maybe I'm not that greedy and I don't need that. What does my margin need to be? And so I can cancel that and try it again. Once again, what if analysis and goal seek, or I can save it and go to the next sheet. Maybe I just need 9. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 by changing then the margin. So you can kind of play around with how that works and what you're interested in, and you can see, oh, then my margin's just 59.79. So it doesn't take a whole lot to make a big option, and of course maybe that helps you out by how much expenses that you're working with, or maybe if I wanted to give more commission or something like that, you could do those type of things. So the what ifs are extremely important in how you want to make your business do what you want to do. And you can, as long as the first cell that you select is a formula, and this value has something to do with one of those cells inside the formula, and you know that this is where it is, this is the margin option. So these are what really makes the difference. And we can then use that percentage, and it'll change the percentage as to what you want and how you want to do it. So that should give you a pretty good overall view of what needs to be done and how to do it. Good luck to you, and work through your program and your projects.